All right. Well, let's get rolling. We're right about that time. So welcome everybody to another Midweek with Max. I can't believe we've been doing this for like a year now. That's wild.
That cannot possibly be true. That doesn't.
No, it is. I think I believe our first AMA before it was called Midweek with Max was October of last year, October 2024. So we've literally been doing this for just over a year now, or around that. So that's wild. So welcome everyone, and thanks for tuning in every week. I'm Rick, joined by the Hemi team. There are many of us on stage, and we will just get things rolling. So kicking it over to Max for weekly update.
All right, awesome. Thanks everyone for coming to another Midweek with Max. Welcome everyone. A couple of engineering updates. So we got the Fusaka upgrade deployed for testnet. And so that activated this morning at like 3:30 a.m. Eastern, roughly around there. So that got activated. If you are running a testnet node, we posted information in the node runners channel, and we've updated the local node setup for testnet specifically to bring in those new versions of opgeth and opnode that you need for compatibility with the L1 activation of Fusaka on Sepolia. And just as a reminder, this does not bring Fusaka features to the Hemi testnet. So like there's, the CLZ opcode, for example, is not the updated EVM. Most of the Fusaka updates they're related to L2s, but they're not features that L2s directly adopt. So for example, Fusaka introduced something called pure DAS, data availability sampling, which makes it basically paves the road for future increases to blob capacity to give more DA space for L2s that are using Ethereum for DA. There's also there were some changes in how those blobs have to be queried from a beacon endpoint. And so there were some updates that were needed for compatibility, but most of the features in Fusaka don't actually apply directly to L2s. Whereas like with Pectra, we had stuff for abstraction that was relevant, things like that. There will be a future upgrade for bringing in the relevant features from Fusaka. So the new CLZ opcode, for example, and that in EVM, we'll probably do that when Optimism Upstream also adopts it. But that is now live on testnet. So if you are running a testnet node, just a reminder, you do have to update the opnode and opgeth versions. And if you're running your own beacon endpoint, there's also some config changes you need to make to that to make sure that it actually subscribes to all of the new blob subnets. So it actually gets all the correct blob data. So pre-Fusaka, all nodes stored all blobs for a retention period of like 18 days. Now post-Fusaka, by default, a beacon node, like say Prism or whatever, is only going to store a subset of the blobs. And if you want to be able to query it for all blobs, you need to tell it to subscribe to all of the pure DAS subnets. So there's configuration options for that. If you're using an L1 RPC provider, like QuickNode, for example, they have that feature enabled, so you can continue querying blobs normally, but the endpoint did change, so you still need the Fusaka compatibility upgrades for OpNode. So just a heads up there. So big thing was getting that upgrade done for testnet. And I've also been doing a lot more work on the ZK prover for TBC, so being able to ZK prove everything about the TBC state transition, all of the HPDM precompile calls, and that paves the way for plugging into some of the other ZK components the rest of the industry is working on for proving things like the optimism stack, proving things about Ethereum consensus. And so that's going to let us, once that's done and integrated into the broader ZK proving stack, that's going to let us ZK settle to Ethereum. And it also paves the way towards BitVM with the ZK proofs we need for that. So making a lot of progress there. I've also finished up the end-to-end testing system for L1 contract upgrades. So we'll be able to test those high-risk settlement contract upgrades in a controlled environment before we actually do the upgrades, which is just a nice sanity check, security check to make sure that we can basically simulate all of the upgrades that we're going to do, make sure all of the settlement from L2 back to L1 through the tunnels, all that's working correctly. So we've got that in. So now we're testing different upgrades that we're planning on doing. And as soon as that testing finishes, we'll be getting those L1 contract upgrade stage for testnet first. And then after let those bake for a week or two in testnet, then we'll do those same upgrades on mainnet. So I think that's most of the development updates. I've also made more progress on the backend system needed for the OG role claim. There is still some UI work that needs to be done, and there's still one piece to the actual role claim that needs to be done on the back end. So still working on that, making good progress, but we're We definitely won't be launching the OG role this week. Depending on how things land, it could be sometime next week if we get all the components finished up for that. But there are some loose ends, and obviously we're pulling people away for more important stuff like getting the Fusaka upgrade done in time and some of the ZK provability. So the team is shifting around a bit on who's working on that and getting it done. So I think with that, I will turn it over to Rick, and we can start going through questions. So we are getting close. We've had a lot of internal discussions. We're moving. This is part of a broader discussion about like general chain
starting
economics,
out
which is
with the reward
what we're
category.
nailing down the final pieces
When will
of hopefully
Hemi
this week.
mainnet
So we
incentive
should have
season 2 launch?
tentatively at least announcements about how it's going to be structured and how some of the economics for things look. Probably sometime next week is my guess. A lot of things that are coming to closure, but we're still dialing some knobs and checking some things. So it is gonna, as we talked about in previous weeks, the quote unquote season 2 is going to look a lot different. It's not going to be as heavily points focused. There may still be points items, or maybe some things we do at sometimes that we incentivize with points, but it is going to focus a lot more on immediate rewards. So things like Merkle campaigns, for example, where there is just a incentive that's offered for providing liquidity in a certain pool for a certain week, and then we'll adjust those incentives based on where we need to get TVL for different use cases of the Hemi chain. If we want more liquidity on the Bitcoin equivalent side, for example, for enabling a certain DeFi use case or whatever. And so having that, obviously it's a better experience for people who are looking to earn yield because you're getting more immediate feedback on what your yield actually is and you're getting to it sooner. But also it lets us be a little more agile with dialing different things up and down as needed for building a quality ecosystem for doing Bitcoin DeFi in. And so that is how. So it may not even be season 2 per se. It may just be the new incentives program going forward, and then we'll maintain resources about where the incentives are, how to access them, and then when we make changes to those and reallocate incentives around, we'll obviously update the community, and people can decide if they want to move funds to different pools or do whatever. So I'll throw this over to John Greenwood as well if he wants to give any additional updates.
Pretty comprehensive. As Max stated, I think that this is going to be much more straightforward for users. Much better UI UX as far as just, hey, this is what we're looking for you to do, or this is what we're looking to incentivize. Go do it, get something very immediately. So that. I feel like I've said that for a couple of weeks now, but that's the overwhelming ethos behind this. And then kind of possible points or other demarcators for sprint rewards for kind of more pending things, partner launches, stuff like that, or drumming up attention to certain aspects of the ecosystem. So getting some final things tuned in there, talking to a couple externals, and we should have something very, very soon. As Max highlighted, it's kind of broader ecosystem push, in economics within that, and that determines a lot of these things. So, these conversations are ongoing and should happen very soon. As always, like currently, there's a lot of liquid rewards availability on Merkle. I believe there's almost 20. Incentivized options at the moment. So, that basically makes up a good portion of what will continue. There might be more on top of that. We might hone that down further. But, you can take advantage of at all times of kind of what will happen during season 2 anyways. So, feel free to hop in at any point. And as soon as we have more information, we can extrapolate on this further.
Yeah, and one of the pushes we're going to be making as well is trying to have a single location where people can go and see the majority of incentives available in the ecosystem. Because right now it's a little partitioned. It's some information is in a blog post, or some information you see when you have the sushi page and you see extra words on certain pools or whatever. And so one of the it's probably not going to be next week, but one of the things that we're working towards is a more cohesive way for people to see all of the yield opportunities in Hemi, both organic yield that's being created by demand on the lending market or whatever, as well as incentives that are specifically allocated to boost rewards in different protocols, different assets. So we are pushing towards getting a more cohesive overview of yield opportunities on Hemi versus sort of this, but is at the moment sort of disjointed between different protocols and different data sources.
All right. So the next question is a bit of a follow-up, but I think you guys really covered it already, but I'm going to ask regardless if there's anything else you'd like to add. What is the primary focus and activities of the Season 2 incentives program?
So primarily the focus is going to be on Bitcoin. So we're still going to be incentivizing things across, non-Bitcoin related things at all, but the focus is certainly going to be very heavily Bitcoin dominant. One of the things that, anything ETH related you can do on Hemi, you can also, for the most part, do on a lot of other chains. Whereas for a lot of the Bitcoin stuff, that's where we have, obviously with connectivity to Bitcoin with HPDM, with the native Bitcoin tunnel, that's a lot more of, unique value propositions and unique DeFi protocols. And in the future, hopefully a lot more, HVM centric DeFi protocols that are only possible to build on Hemi. And so Season 2 is going to be leaning, I'd say, more into the Bitcoin side, even than we were before. And at least initially, I'd say most of the activity is going to be around DEXs, providing liquidity for DEX pairs and for lending protocols. But we do have some other interesting yield opportunities on Bitcoin that obviously we already have Spectre on chain. People have been using that. There's some other interesting sort of, beyond just DEX liquidity and lending protocol liquidity that are also interesting that will probably amp up as we get a little further into Season 2 as well. So I'll throw this one back to John if there's any other areas of DeFi yield that he wanted to highlight as focuses of Season 2, but I think that mostly covers it from a primarily Bitcoin focus, and then a lot of focus on liquidity and kind of core fundamental DeFi protocols that are the building blocks for tons of other more complex stuff on top of it.
Yeah, once again, very well covered, Max. I think primarily Bitcoin onboarding, Bitcoin utilization on Hemi, and then kind of Bitcoin yield being rolled into like partner projects, stuff like that will be the main directives as of now. Probably a couple other things that are more ecosystem relevant outside of that, but that will be the majority of the prospectus. So prime your Hemi BTC, I guess, is the best way to put it.
All right. We are now into the when category. When can we expect VBK updates? Is there anything we can update now, Max, regarding VBK?
I have made some progress on the technical side for the claim process, so that is moving along. Got interrupted by some of the Fusaka stuff, but we are making progress there. So again, apologies, things keep getting delayed, but really hoping to have something together for that late this week or early next week, now that we're past the Fusaka upgrade.
All right. Let's see. Okay, when merch?
Very soon. I don't know an exact date. I know we're still coming up with. We have some really fun designs. I won't spoil anything yet, but the team's put a lot of thought, love, and attention into some of the merch designs, which are really coming together. We do have a store set up, but not public yet, and so we're still tweaking some things. But that is, I'd say, I'm just going to guess within a month we would have a merch store up, if not sooner. Don't hold us to that. That's not the number one priority, but probably something in that time frame.
I think that's pretty accurate, and I can add a little bit to that. So basically, the internal chatter is there's going to be 2 stores within one. So one will be primarily for like all like the really slick, like Hemi-centric designs of like our overall core branding and whatnot. But then we're going to have a community store, and that's going to be more like the mascots and the inside jokes about like level 5, etc. So all the stuff that you guys have done in Discord for the last year, we've recorded it. to a degree, and we'll be putting them on shirts and mugs and et cetera, hopefully. So yeah, it's going to be. Oh, sorry. As Joshua said, it's a community collection, not a store necessarily. Thank you for the correction on that. But yeah, as Max said, should be coming sooner than later. We just have a couple things to tweak and a couple approvals to get, but it's looking really good, and I think people are going to be pretty stoked on it. Leaving the when category and entering into events. What events will Hemi be attending next?
I'm definitely not the best person to ask about that. I kind of just show up where people say I need to show up. But I don't know, John, if you have any insights on some of the upcoming events. We just did Korea Blockchain Week and Singapore Blockchain Week, so those were the big ones on the calendar for this time of the year. But I'm not actually sure what's coming up.
I know Argentina, Dev, geez, the heck's it called again? Dev something. Drawing a blank, man. Besides that, know that some of us might be in New York for a smaller event. It's like a Bitcoin centered event. Beyond that, still have a lot of planning to do. So honestly, sorry for the lax answer, but yeah, Argentina is probably the next larger one, and that's in about a month and a week, 5 weeks from now.
All right. Bit of a follow-up to that. I will add a disclaimer that I did post this question into a marketing channel on Slack so we can get the marketing team's eyes on this. But this is from a creator, one of our moderators. India Blockchain Week is happening in India from December 2nd to 3rd. A few of us will be attending, and I was thinking about organizing a Hemi side event during the event. Could be a great chance to connect with the community and showcase Hemi to a wider Indian audience.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. Let's chat through that. And we got a fair bit of time too. You said early December.
Yeah, it's the 2nd to the 4th, I believe.
Okay, cool. Yeah, one of the things yeah, we should definitely chat offline about doing some sort of side event. One of the things we want to start doing is empowering the community to go and run side events, and talk about Hemi, talk about what we're building, roadmap, like just what is Hemi, what are we doing, have some collateral materials, and be able to have like a pipeline for people who want to propose, hey, I'd like to run this event and do these things. And then it can either be, maybe through the grant or bounty program or something orthogonally connected to that, where we'd be able to, fund the pizza and beers or whatever for the event, and also give you some materials and stuff to share with people. So yeah, we should definitely chat, and that is something we want to start packaging more in a self-serve way that the community can start doing their own Hemi side events at conferences, or if you want to do a Hemi meetup in your town or whatever. So yeah, let's definitely chat, and we will have a more formal program for that in the future.
That's incredible news, and I really think the community will love that, because a number of folks have actually mentioned hosting events and whatnot. And if there's a formal pipeline in place where we can support that, I think that's going to go a long way. Moving on to pop mining. When will the new pop payout algorithm be implemented? I feel like I say that in my sleep sometimes.
Also very soon. So we finished up the actual code for it, and so now now that we're past the Fusaka upgrade, now we can get that deployed on testnet. That was a bit of a blocker because that's two different testnet upgrades, and we did end up making the smart contract code for it a little more complicated, just to allow some future tweaks and modifications to it through governance. And so it is complex enough that we are electing to get a external audit on that as well. So we're going to be sending that out to auditors probably in the next day or two, and then it's relatively simple code, so it's not a crazy long audit cycle, but that'll probably push it out a little bit for actual activation on mainnet. So we'll probably get it activated on testnet ideally before the end of this week. Now that we're past Fusaka, that's a lot easier to do, and then on mainnet probably in the next 2-ish weeks once we get the final audit reports back.
All right, still on pop mining. When will locked Hemi tokens received for pop mining be unlocked?
Because the pop payout algorithm is getting delayed a bit for auditing, we'll probably activate that before we do the actual pop payouts update. So TBD on exactly when, but sometime in the next, certainly in the next 2 weeks, if not sooner. We have most of the pieces staged for that. We were originally going to include it in the same update that did the actual pop payouts algorithm update. We're probably going to split those out and let people get their Hemi tokens for their pop points earned since the original claim process ahead of the actual update to the pop payout algorithm.
All right. Still on pop mining, and forgive me, this may fall under the same answer as the previous question, but when will it be possible to convert new pop point tokens to Hemi?
Yeah, it's pretty much what I just described. So we're going to separate out the pop points to Hemi token conversion and do that before the pop payouts upgrade, because now we have the smart contract auditing that's delaying that a bit. So whenever we put that live, then you'll be able to convert all the pop points you've earned since the original claim, which already gave you tokens for pop points up to that point. Then the new claim will let you swap new pop points that you've earned since then. And then when we adopt the full new pop payout algorithm, then pop points are going to completely go away and you'll just get paid out in liquid Hemi tokens for all the pop mining activities.
All right. Moving on to VE Hemi. What is the purpose of VE Hemi?
So VE Hemi, you can think of it as staked Hemi. VE stands for vote escrow, which is a nod to the use of VE Hemi tokens in governance in the future. So VE Hemi is basically going to be the economic superhighway of all of the use cases of Hemi for anything that's like quote unquote protocol native. And then at some point, we're also going to expand it out to a system for being able to buy economic security for your own protocol in a similar way to like restaking protocols like EigenLayer, for example. But VE Hemi is you stake once, and then as we add new things to do with staked Hemi, you'll be able to opt into all of those through that one single token. So for example, when we launch decentralized sequencing, if you already have a VE Hemi position, you'll be able to restake that position and become a sequencer. When we launch HPDM, you'll be able to restake one of your VE Hemi positions to participate in, say, covenant emulation or being an operator if you have a lot of liquidity. When we launch the decentralized batch proposer, you'll restake VE Hemi as collateral to then post DA blobs and state root proofs to Ethereum for settlement. And so VE Hemi, basically anything that requires staking Hemi in the ecosystem will go through the VE Hemi token. There's third parties working on other things to do with liquid Hemi tokens that also create a staked position. So those will be separate. So if there's staking Hemi tokens in some other protocol to provide them economic security or something, that's separate because that's not a protocol native component of the stack. Although in the future we do want to merge that and let them use VE Hemi for that as well if they want to. But high level VE Hemi is basically staked Hemi for participation in everything that's central to the Hemi protocol.
All right. I have one more question regarding VE Hemi. I bought VE Hemi from someone. Where can I see the details/metadata of the VE Hemi NFT, and how can I claim the Hemi tokens when the lockup period ends?
So you can see the actual raw data on the Explorer if you want, but that's not super helpful. I do believe if it's not live yet, it'll be live soon. But I do believe if you go to the Hemi portal and look at the VE Hemi staking portion, I believe it should show your current positions there. And so that'd be a better way to get to the. It's not showing you the actual metadata, but like the actual meaning of the metadata.
Yeah, if you just go to the where Max just said, you can view your current lock positions, and it shows like the amount for how long, etc. So pretty much a breakdown of the metadata you would see within the Explorer.
And also, this isn't part of the question, but as part of the overall economics work that we're finalizing, that does include the VE Hemi yield as well. So in the relatively near future, we will be announcing the VE Hemi, the initial VE Hemi rewards allocation, and then from that we can actually calculate APYs that people are earning on positions. So it is coming as part of the broader economics updates that include all of the season 2 incentives as well.
All right. right. Thank you. That's great news. I know people are like clamoring for that. Moving on to engineering, so we can actually hear JCV swear and not break his Cal Ripken-like streak. What is the new Hemi node repository, and how is the node setup process changing?
All right, I will take that and I will ignore being smeared totally unfairly that you think I'm going to swear about this, right? Well, you're goddamn wrong. Actually, you're goddamn right. But anyway,
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
no, so that new repo, the Hemi node repo, the purpose of that was that up until now, we had all that mixed in the Hemi network repository, which meant lots and lots of changes go in there. All of our work goes in there. So if you're just running a node, you had to in some way filter out what changes matter to you and what don't. This way, we just pulled all of the existing stuff that was the Docker composed files, any of the other crap that goes along with Docker and all that, into a repository of its own. So at the moment, the only meaningful change is that instead of cloning Hemi network, you now clone Hemi node, which only has the stuff that you need. And other than that, that's kind of it. Long term, it means we can, tag things in more reasonable ways. We can iterate faster on that repository. It means we can, like Joshua just mentioned, we can actually do the documentation in nicer ways, cleaner ways, and it can stay up to date. I'm reading things Joshua's writing there, but at the moment there is no change. It just lives in a different place so that you have to look at less of our stuff to run a node. And that's kind of it. It's cleanup rather than any massive change. But it's cleanup that should make your life easier, not just our lives easier for cleaning up. Your life being if you're someone who runs a node. If you don't run a node, then you have no reason to worry yourself about it.
And the reason we're doing that refactor is because when we previously had it in the Hemi network repository, you have this sort of chicken and egg problem where you do a new release of Hemi network to get the new builds, and then you have to update local node in that repo. So the Hemi network, folder inside the repo would never have the daemon versions that match the tag that it's in. And so separating those out is just a lot cleaner because now we have tags of the Hemi network, and in the future for releases, tags of opnode, tags of opgeth, and then we have a separate repo that is updated with all of the right versions of all the right nodes for a certain release.
So one of the things that this points out is once you've been doing this long enough, you realize that mono repos are the best. Everything has to go in a mono repo, and that will fix all the problems. But then that causes some problems, so you start breaking things out into smaller repos until you have a lot of smaller repos, and then what do you know? Mono repos come back in fashion again. So that is unfortunately the cyclic nature of this industry, but this industry being the whole goddamn computing industry where, it's either mono repos or lots of little repos, but we're trying to at least take a somewhat reasonable middle ground where it's not about that, which side of it's trendy. It's more what is operationally, what leads to the least steps and the least likelihood of things falling out of sync. And this is a funny one where by doing things not in a mono repo, we made it easier for things to stay in sync. Whereas usually people think mono repos are great because they let you keep everything in sync magically. And this is a case where you can't. So we are, doing the practical thing rather than having any particular religious beliefs about one method of working or the other.
All right. Thank you, sir. I have more engineering questions. What is required to run a V2 pop miner?
So with the Hemi Network V2 upgrade, we made some pretty significant refactors to basically the entire network topology. So we got rid of BSS, we made some changes to BFG, we introduced TBC as a standalone Bitcoin node, and so I'll let some other people on the team maybe talk to some of the on-the-ground configuration specifics in more detail, but basically we're consolidating things, and you will now point your pop miner instead of pointing to BFG, the pop miner is now going to talk to opgeth and TBC for propagating Bitcoin transactions. But I don't know if Antonio, you want to provide any specific details, because that was a component you were working on quite a bit.
Let me see. I think the easiest way to kind of explain to people who might be affected by this is we're basically dealing with all the technical debt of the project becoming much bigger very quickly and a lot of changes. So basically streamlining how everything is connected within the Hemi network. So we had BSS, which had a use at the start, but eventually just kind of became a proxy for our daemons like TBC, our tiny Bitcoin, to communicate with opnode and opget and BFG. And eventually some of these things stopped making quite as much sense, data being directly stored in BFG, etc. So it's kind of reconnecting all the wires to make everything run more smoothly, things to not have to go through hoops to communicate with each other, and overall make everything make more sense, hopefully have require people to have to run less things to actually participate in the network. And yeah, we have a lot of documentation on V2 if you want to know some of the technical details, but I think generally speaking should make everyone's life easier.
I also did see a question in chat. What are the hardware specs for running TBC and opgeth? How long to sync? So the minimal node setup, it's called the Hemi Docker profile. It just runs opnode and opgeth. And for that, you need, for mainnet, roughly 16 gigabytes of RAM and recommended 2 terabytes of fast disk. So preferably NVMe, probably SATA SSD would also work. If you want to run all of the components, so a full stack, which includes a full Ethereum Prism node as well, that's several terabytes of storage. It depends on your blob retention as well. One of the things that's really complicated about running L2 nodes, if you want to run the full stack, is really the L1 component, because obviously an Ethereum node is very heavy, but then also from the L2 perspective, you have to have access to all of the historical blob data. And so there's really no way to get that from peer-to-peer, because most nodes on the network prune that. And so in reality, starting up a new node, now in October 2025, you would need to use a existing historical RPC blob provider like, say, a QuickNode or a DIN. And then once your node's caught up, then you could switch over to a full Ethereum node as your L1 RPC configured to, and now with the Fusaka upgrade active on testnet, you also need to configure that L1 node to be a quote unquote super node, which means that it actually subscribes to all the pure DAS subnets. So it has access to all of the blobs instead of just a portion of the blobs that it needs for regular block validation. So long story short, if you want to just run the minimal components, 16 gigs of disk, 2 terabytes of storage, and a L1 archival RPC that you have access to. If you want to run the full stack, you're still going to need that archival node if you want to do a full sync from scratch. You can also do a snap sync, and snap syncs will take roughly 30 minutes. But you do also have to sync the TBC data directory, and that happens over Bitcoin peer-to-peer. So that can be from mainnet probably a day to 2 days, depending on your internet speed and computing power. So if you're spinning up a snap sync node, it's probably 2 to 3 days of total time. And if you're spinning up a full sync, a full consensus layer sync from Ethereum, that's probably at this point for mainnet going to be a week to 2 weeks for all the historical state calculations.
All right. 2 more engineering questions in the hopper. How are Hemi Bitcoin vaults secured and operated? And is the Hemi Bitcoin tunnel fully permissionless and trustless?
So right now we're operating the vaults for the Bitcoin tunnel. The system is designed to be decentralized, so letting tons of people run vaults with all kinds of different collateral. We are working on an upgrade to the Bitcoin tunnel system that's going to add some additional features and further enhance vault security, allowing hot and cold storage separation. And so we're going to get that upgrade in first, and then we're going to do a big push for getting the community to start running the Bitcoin vaults, and we can start winding down our operations of running Bitcoin vaults for the network. And then once we get to HPDM, then they will be as close to trustless and permissionless as possible. So you can never get to fully trustless and fully permissionless without some updates to the Bitcoin protocol. You can get to one of n honesty, where that group of n can be 100 or 1,000 community participants. So it's sort of from a, it's spiritually similar to like a, KZG setup ceremony in some sense, where you have tons of people participating, and as long as one of them is honest or doesn't include with all the other participants, then the system's secure. So that's, once we get to HPDM, it'll be one of n trust with a very large n. And if you want to make it fully trustless from your perspective, you can be one of those covenant emulation participants. And until then, we are running the vaults now. We're working on an upgrade that will improve cold and hot storage separation features and do some other things that make the deposit flow a little more fault proof by removing the need for the op return in there. And once we get that upgrade in, we're going to do a big push to get community decentralized vaults running.
All right, another great update. Our final engineering question, and I actually don't see much else in the hopper currently. What made you decide to build a new Bitcoin node implementation from scratch? And how does it differ from traditional Bitcoin nodes like
Bitcoin D, Bitcoin Daemon.
Bitcoin D. Okay, sorry. I didn't know if it was like Bitcoin, just like the past tense of Bitcoin. Okay. Anyway, that's the question.
Great question. This was one of the major engineering feats of building Hemi, was actually creating this custom Bitcoin node. So there's a couple different reasons. The first is, so we wanted to embed a Bitcoin node inside the EVM, and there's all kinds of amazing stuff you can do once you actually have an EVM that can talk to Bitcoin. And the short answer is Bitcoin D doesn't do everything that we needed. And so even if you had, Bitcoin, if you just took Bitcoin D and you connected an EVM to it, you're missing a lot of the index data that we wanted to expose in the EVM. So for example, Bitcoin D does not make it easy at all or efficient at all to query for UTXOs. So if you have an arbitrary address and you say, give me all the UTXOs that are controlled by this address, you can run Bitcoin D in a mode where it's going to index some of this data, and you can do a query that forces it to crawl through the entire UTXO table that it has in memory and return that result. But some old performance testing from a long time ago, on mainnet, those queries for a single address took 15 to 30 seconds, which is obviously untenable. You can't have a precompiled call in an EVM taking 15 to 30 seconds. It's got to complete in milliseconds. And so Bitcoin D, for that reason, and also needing to customize some stuff that makes you actually able to programmatically embed it inside of opgeth, be able to, glue it together with the existing code instead of having, it talk to a Bitcoin RPC endpoint. And then the other important part was being able to deterministically drive canonical state transitions. And so if you just had a Bitcoin D node, Bitcoin D is going to always update to the current state of the Bitcoin network that it hears about over peer-to-peer. And with TBC, because you're doing precompiled calls in the EVM that get Bitcoin data and do something with it in the EVM, you have to make sure that when every single node processes the same Hemi block, they have the exact same view of Bitcoin. So the way we did that is basically, from a L2 architecture perspective, the same way that Optimism style chains pull in data about the Ethereum chain through what they call a L1 attributes deposited transaction, which says, here's the current block where the Ethereum block we're derived from, here's some info about that block. It brings in some info about the current gas market to be used for the on-chain gas price oracle, stuff like that. Similarly, we introduced a Bitcoin attributes deposited transaction, which is basically pulling in additional Bitcoin information into the protocol. So that gives us a deterministic update of knowledge of Bitcoin consensus. And then we have TBC, a second version of TBC. So first version of TBC is called header-only mode. And so it runs just header-only consensus, so lightweight consensus like you use for like an SPV wallet. And that's updated by those Bitcoin attributes deposited transactions included by the sequencer in Hemi blocks. So that ensures that the Hemi protocol has a deterministic view of Bitcoin consensus. And then that deterministic view of Bitcoin consensus is then what the full TBC node, which peers directly with the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network, hears about new Bitcoin blocks over peer-to-peer, then its indexers are updated to reflect that deterministic state from the lightweight node, which is updated from those Bitcoin attributes deposited transactions. So that gives you data custody isn't the right word, but it gives you a flow control to make sure that the state of Bitcoin is deterministic within a certain Hemi block's execution across all nodes. And so that's also something that wouldn't have been easier possible to do with Bitcoin D, even ignoring the lack of a lot of the indexers that we needed for different data we wanted to reveal. And the cool thing is TBC, it was originally built so that we could embed a Bitcoin node in an EVM, but also TBC can run on its own just as a brand new custom Bitcoin node participant. So you can run TBC in just a regular mode outside of opgeth and treat it just like a Bitcoin node that has an indexer built in. So a lot of people who run backend services where they need Bitcoin data, they will run Bitcoin D and then they'll run an indexer like electors, for example, on top of it. So like if you go to Blockstream, they have their Explorer API. That's basically a custom version of electors that they modified and maintain, and I think translated to Rust if I remember correctly. But they have Bitcoin D for the actual data. So what is the data that comprises the Bitcoin chain? And then they have an indexer on top of it that says, okay, based on that raw data, we want to extract out and be able to efficiently query UTXOs for an address or whatever it may be. And so TBC is all of that folded into one node. So it's a full node. It talks to the Bitcoin network, but it also indexes tons of really rich data about Bitcoin that then you can query direct from it. So if you're building a service on Bitcoin where your stack would normally be Bitcoin D and electors or something similar on top of it, for a lot of use cases, you can replace all of that with just a TBC node.
One thing I'll add to that, a long time ago, so I want to say like 2018 or so, I spent probably a year keeping a patch for adding some index, maybe addresses, but I'm not sure I remember for sure. There was a patch for adding those indexes into Bitcoin D, and I think I spent a year for internal purposes keeping that patch up to date with the latest version of Bitcoin D, and it was terrible. Bitcoin D is a great piece of software, but there are things it was clearly not meant for, and that was one of them. And keeping those patches up to date for it was awful. So something like TBC, where it was indexing is more inherent to it, would have been great then. And so yes, it just shows that I definitely know reasons why there were uses for things like this even prior to Hemi. It's just Hemi is what it took for us to be able to do it.
I do want to add that very important reasons because we could. That was definitely part of the equation. And I also want to say something maybe more historical, specifically to Hemi, is that at first this wasn't at all obvious that we were going to do this. So as we started working on this, it just became more and more obvious that in order to do it right, we had to go the extra mile. It was not we were not going to be able to get there with what existed at the time. We had to do something a little bit more intricate and clever, and honestly, just better than existed at the time. So we spent pretty significant amounts of time working on this and getting it off the ground. And I do got to say, it's a pretty spectacular piece of software that is the backbone of Hemi, I'd say. Do you agree, Max?
Absolutely. And now we're all of the ZK stuff you guys have heard me talk about for the last ungodly amount of time. Tons of that work is being done in TBC or is built on top of or will be built on top of TBC. And so TBC is sort of the cornerstone for all things Bitcoin and Hemi, basically. Obviously, there's stuff built on top of it. There's the Bitcoin tunnel system built in the EVM. People can build all kinds of infrastructure using that, but ultimately, at the end of the day, all of that comes down to the data in the indexing and the participation in Bitcoin peer-to-peer that TBC is doing under the hood. Actually, a funny, if we're going to talk about historical notes, back when we were still architecting, what exactly does it look like to embed a Bitcoin node in an EVM? How would that work? The very first prototype we wrote, and we knew this was not a good approach. We were just doing it so we prototypes and things. But I wrote a Bitcoin indexer in Java So we had Bitcoin D, we had this terrible Bitcoin indexer I wrote in Java. It dumped all the data into Postgres database, and then opgeth would pull Bitcoin data for precompile calls out of Postgres database. So I don't know if that code even ever made it to GitHub. Probably not, and for good reason. But that was the original super early prototype, so we could start playing around with building things on the Atrium and Bitcoin kit while we were still getting the TBC implementation done and integrated into opgeth.
All right.
I'll add
That was
one
a-
more thing to that. Hang on, Rick. One more. We actually have a lot of really interesting low-hanging fruit in TBC that could be done and that we need some help with. So if somebody is looking for an interesting opportunity of writing some open source code and basically padding your online resume, there's a lot of fun stuff to do there that we really can use some help with. Just want to throw that out there.
Both TBC and the pop miner are great places if you want to get your hands dirty, learn more about the Hemi protocol, and contribute to something that actually gets merged in and used by tons of people. The pop miner is relatively simple, so that can be a good place to start. Or TBC if you really want to get into the Bitcoin, low-level Bitcoin details. TBC's there's tons of improvements we can make in there, tons of optimizations, tons of quality of life things that could be done for it. And also, if you're building something, somebody asked if Deber asked, will TBC relay sub 1 sat transactions? I think it would relay them. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I don't know, Marco or Antonio, if you know about the specifics of the Bitcoin transaction relay rules in TBC.
I am mildly
Somebody
familiar,
constructed
but, not sure what
a
you're
transaction with, say, 0.1 sats per vbyte. Would TBC relay it to the peer-to-peer network?
I think it's 1 set per vbyte
No.
that it's
Well,
in the code, I believe. But that's also from consensus from somewhere, if I'm not mistaken.
And that's something. Okay, Marco.
No, so yeah, so consensus would not allow it, but I do have to admit that our broadcaster is meant to be used locally. So if I would to create a malicious transaction or one that is not exactly right, I'm pretty sure it will try to transmit it. But then so any Bitcoin D node which will actually sit on a network is going to reject it, right?
I think sub 1 vbyte will still be propagated over peer-to-peer. I know there are minimum thresholds. Way back in the day, it was 5432
Yeah.
satoshis was like the
Yeah.
minimum dust amount. So I think sub 1 satoshi can be relayed over peer-to-peer, but there is a lower threshold still being enforced. Although I don't know
know that
exactly
for
what
a
it is at the
fact
current
either. So
moment.
I'm not. Yeah, and again, we do not really verify the correctness rules, I guess is the way that it's called. So we, believe it or not, correctness is actually a little bit more tight than consensus. So, and those are the transactions that are allowed into the mempool. But I do not know the numbers.
All right. Joshua just posted a link in chat regarding this, I believe.
Let's see, block fee rate, 1 satoshi per 1 satoshi per kiloVbyte. So it sounds like Bitcoin peer-to-peer will accept broadcasts as low as 0.0001 sats per vbyte. So that'd be an easy update on the TBC side to change the broadcast propagation rule. But what I was going to say before I got distracted with that question was TBC, it's also, there's tons of use cases of TBC beyond just the Hemi network. So if you want to build something in the Bitcoin world, like where you need a Bitcoin indexer or something like that, TBC is a great tool to build around, and that could be another reason to use it for your use cases. And then if you put improvements to it that help your use case, that's also if it's applicable to a general audience for a justifiable use case of TBC, not like some crazy one-off custom thing that you needed only for your setup. But if it is something that's more generally applicable and interesting to potentially other people trying to use TBC to build other things, that's also a great thing that you could contribute back to TBC. Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with Hemi's use of TBC, but it makes it just a better Bitcoin ecosystem tool for everyone. So that's another great way to contribute if you do have an interesting use case of TBC you want to explore.
Yep, and again, actually, just to highlight again, open source development. So if you are interested in sharing, shoring up the correctness rules in broadcast, that's also a relatively low hanging fruit that you could show up with patches for.
All right, we have one more engineering question, but I did see something pop up in chat. I believe this was something that Jeff had posted. If you bear with me for 1 second. Yeah. Okay, so here's a question regarding something Jeff had posted. Is the Hemi lending rate alert bot already done by someone? Basically, Jeff had pitched the idea of folks creating a Hemi rate alert bot. So I'm not sure if it would be, I believe it was an X type of thing, but I don't know if there's been an update or if anyone's working on it, or if there's any comments to be made. But I figured I'd bring that to the show.
Nothing I'm specifically aware of. It's very possible that somebody in the community has built some tooling around something like that I'm not familiar with, but yeah, nothing to add from my perspective on that. It'd definitely be cool, and it'd be a great target for a community bounty or grant or something like that.
And just to build on what the previous conversation was, the builder role is always available. Joshua, if you don't mind posting the details, you can, if you're building cool stuff on Hemi, if you're building games, if you're building apps, if you're building whatever you're building, the builder role is always available and you can apply for it. Moving on to our final engineering / question. It's both. It's an engineering question, but it's also the final question that I have in the hopper. Can anyone currently run a Bitcoin vault? And are vaults smart contracts, or where is the code?
I don't think we open source the vault code yet. That is something we should do in the near future. And then that'll let anyone spin up and run a vault as long as you post the minimum collateral. We are sort of waiting for this Bitcoin tunnel upgrade to get in before we push and try to get community members really running vaults, because the upgrade is going to deprecate all the existing vaults that are running. And so having that, getting people to post collateral, do all the setup, and then mine to a new vault setup is sort of a pain. So we are waiting until we get that upgrade in before we start pushing for community run vaults. All of the smart contract code for how the tunnel actually works, all of that's open source. I don't think the vault code is currently open source, but we should open source that in the near future.
All right, that brings us to the end of questions. I'm going to get Alex up here for the community update for the week, and then we can do our outros and wrap things up. And here he is.
Hello. You hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Nice. So thank you for this community show for this week. It's always quiet. I mean, a lot of community members waiting for season 2. But during this time, there is always activity. Some builders have built some cool things. So it's not official from Hemi. So take care of you, take care of what you've seen as ever in the crypto game. But you can find on our server in the channel ecosystem project. You can find 2 new tools. One is to tip creators directly on chain. There is few bugs on this website when I test it, but I mean that will be upgraded soon. And there is a VME market too, built by Sub. It's a community member. There is a lot of transaction, but as I say before, it's not official from Hemi. Use it at your own risk, but it's really cool, and that proof the activity on chain is always here, and builder are involved in a Hemi ecosystem. You have on Binance, it's Binance Square, the social media on Binance, actually a contest for creators. So there is some voucher, Hemi vouchers to grab. The end of this campaign is the 10 November. So just connect on Binance. Rick has already posted something about it in announcement channel. So, and I will put the link in the chat. So you can all participate. You have to post some content on Binance Square to grab some Hemi. We have the stickers contest. Sorry, on Air server. So we have our winner. The main winner is Broken. Yes, it's his name. So congrats to him. All participants will grab some air points. So open a ticket on Air server and provide your EVM address to obtain your rewards. To finish, and I don't know if I can say it or no, but I will. Maybe I will be fired after this AMA. But I invite all creators to prepare themselves to create some video content. There will be some surprise with Hemi soon. So if you have abilities in video content creating, you can start to try to do something that can be humoristic video or tutorial video about Hemi services. But that's it. That's all for this week. So I give back the mic to Rick, and thank you to all.
Thank you so much, Alex. And actually, I was going to bring that up as well. So you are safe, sir. To Alex's point, we are in the process of developing a community, like a hub, like a community YouTube style channel, which will be on YouTube. So I don't know why I said style, because it's a community YouTube channel. That's what the hell it is. So for folks who have been creating stuff in the community content, the user content channel, the moderators are going to be going through a lot of stuff and reviewing and making sure like the information's accurate, etc. So to Alex's point, if you guys can create, if you're looking, to get some stuff out there, create some tutorials of how to use Hemi services, create some cool meme videos. It's stuff you guys are already doing, but feel free to tag the moderators if you have something that you've created. We can start putting it all together. I'd like to do playlists of like educational stuff, so tutorials and things of that nature, but also more of like, the spirit of the community. So like videos with the mascots, all the ways that you guys make fun of Joshua and I. Gloves off, anything goes, just make it cool, make it funny. Sorry, Josh, but it's true. They make fun of us all the time, but I think it's good spirited. Alex has one more brief update, and then we're going to get to outros and get out of here.
Yes, just I forget it. There is actually some incentive on Morpho, so you can provide USDC or Hemi BTC on a vault, and you can grab some cool APR. So as ever, to check on to don't miss opportunity on Hemi chain, go connect on Merkle, filter the Hemi network, and you will be able to see all actual activities with partners, with other protocols, and it's my today tips. Thank you, Rick, and sorry for this forget.
Not a problem at all, sir. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Max and team for outros, but I just want to thank our entire moderation team who has been doing just the Lord's work since day one and continue to do so. So thank you to our entire moderation team. Thank you for the community who joins us week after week. A lot of big things in the pipeline, guys. I know it's a little quiet right now, but that's just because so much stuff is being developed. And there's going to be a lot of fun stuff to do really soon. So with that, thank you all. Turn it over to Max and team for outros, and we'll see you next week.
All right, awesome. Thanks everyone for coming to another Midweek with Max. Lots of exciting stuff in the pipeline that you should be seeing in the next coming weeks here, between updated pop payouts algorithm, some more progress on the ZK provability side, and some cool features starting to emerge from that. HPDM white paper, we're adding some even additional content for some ways that you can use the vault setup for other cool creative things in the Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem. So we are looking at getting that published in the near future, but we are making some additional updates and additions to it before we push the first version of that out. We did also, just as a side note, looked into the minimum relay fee that we're using in TBC, and it is set to the same that Bitcoin Core 29.1 is using. So it is that 1,000 Satoshis per, let's see, it's 1,000. It's a 1,000 Satoshi per 1,000 bytes currently. So actually, I think that's from a previous release. So that will be updated to whatever the newer version is, if it's been changed for Bitcoin Core, if there's a different relay rule. And yeah, thanks everyone for coming out. We will see you next week.
See you next
Take
week.
care, all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.